Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the Parenting Through Challenges podcast. I am your host, Angie Grant, and today I have a special guest with me. I am here to welcome Cassandra Quick. I met Cassandra many, many moons ago. We worked together at the same behavioral health clinic. And so I got to know you, Cassandra, very remotely in that capacity. But I was always curious. You have a different approach and perspective to patients, and then our paths crossed again more recently. You invited me into your lab, so I would love for you to share a smidge about that. But I want to just say, so here's the reason that I invited you, Cassandra, into my podcast is you are helping leaders, and in particular, women leaders. And when I think about my listeners, they are leaders, leaders in their family, and
Right.
sometimes leading coworkers that don't want to be led. And I thought you and I could have a really interesting conversation around this topic of our role as leaders, how to really step up as leaders, and how that really intersects with our parenting journey. So I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. I think this is going to be just such a really useful, organic conversation that hits home for so many of your listeners. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too. So can you, I'd love for you to share what you do, who you serve, how you have an impact in the
Yes.
world.
Right. So I am a somatic EMDR informed coach, and I am a therapist as well with trauma training. I've been in the mental health field for 22 years as a therapist, and even broader beyond that, working with families in the community of autism way back when I was 19, and I'm in my 40s now. So it's been a long time. And that was quite an experience for me. So I've been in the mental health field really for over probably, I think 20, over 25 years at this point in one capacity or another. So I've seen different versions of what families look like with different needs. So that's kind of the perspective I'm bringing. And I also do run a school nervous system leadership lab for women where I help women rewire imposter syndrome, perfectionism, people pleasing with science-based tools. So anything from trauma conscious yoga to emotional freedom technique to EMDR informed bilateral tapping. So, really giving women the ability to ground themselves, regulate, and be able to step into their leadership in themselves and in different capacities in their life. So, plus, I am a parent as well, and I have an amazing beautiful soul of a daughter who is 20. She's going to be 21 in March,
Wow.
which is a big milestone, right? So that's also perspective that I bring to the space. Before I stepped into my role in private practice, now I only see adults. I did work with children for 18 years. And everything that I could see, I think I saw, from in-home therapy that I did to working in private practice to the hospital system that we worked in. There were just different perspectives that I could see, and I bring that to the table today. It'd be great to have conversation around all of that. So,
Yeah, yeah. I know. So like I had mentioned, I'm in your leadership lab and I am loving it. And
yeah,
I find it so fascinating, right? I've been in this mindset world, self-development world for
right.
quite some time now. And your perspective is so interesting. And one thing that I thought might be an interesting discussion topic is the concept of perfectionism. I think I had shared with you that I never would have called myself a perfectionist. I know that there are many women who wear their perfectionist crown, right?
Oh, yes.
They boast about being a perfectionist and also beat themselves up about it, but I never thought I
Right.
was
Right.
until you explained it as really a here's my take on it. And, feel free to share your feedback. But as you explained it as a nervous system response to really, I take it to be to being trained to be a people pleaser. And it's not that I think anybody trained me to be a people pleaser, but my life circumstances led me to feel safest if I
That's
was
right.
appeasing others and being the good girl and trying to put out only my best work, trying like, or holding myself back from putting out good enough work. I look back to my
Right.
childhood and college years and all of that, and like I take so much pride in like being an A student and like putting out prime work and being a star employee and all those things. So I don't call myself a perfectionist yet. I have to put out the best.
Right, right. Because, I think maybe what happens for some of us in this realm is the people pleasing part creates that space of perfectionism because you want that. You're like craving that, whatever it is, if it's adoration or love or even attention, and rightly so, because as humans, we want to connect. And specifically with our attachment figures or people that we look up to, or even to fit in.
Hmm.
So you think about people who experience bullying. And so what do? Like we try to be something maybe different or whatever it is. And I don't specifically know your story too much at this point. Um, but that definitely is common. And so I think about fawning, for example, like that fawning response. So fawning is when we do some of these things, the people pleasing, and that is in response to a nervous system state. So if it's fight, flight, freeze, depending on the situation, we might react that way and stay small or whatever it might be. But part of it is really like noticing that maybe we're really paying attention to what we're doing because we want to fit in, because we want to please, because whatever it might be. So
Yeah. Or even like, I mean, for me, I think it's less about like through human design, I'm a 2-5 profile. I like to like this sounds silly because I have a podcast, but I like to, keep my cards close to my chest. I don't
yes,
I don't I don't think that I do a lot of things to like seek attention, although the
yes,
more I learn
right,
about my human design, I realize I do, but I think that
yeah.
my perfectionism comes from almost avoiding any type of negative attention, right? If I'm
Oh,
perfect,
sure,
my nervous
right,
system feels safer because if
right,
I am the most perfect employee or you know, submit the most perfect paper or whatever it might,
right.
I'm avoiding any
You're
type of
avoiding that, yeah,
huh.
the like the spotlight, so to
Hmm.
speak, right?
Yeah,
So then it's not safe to be in the spotlight.
yeah,
That's, maybe a negative core belief for you.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so then so then I take this thread and I tie it to the
Yeah.
experience of parents, and you said your
Right.
daughter is
Right.
21 or gonna be 21. My kids are
Right.
20 and 24.
Right.
We, you and I didn't have that experience of raising kids through the lens of social media nearly as much, right?
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
I think about parents with younger kids now, kids who are,
Oof.
15 and under, and that pressure to be perfect on social media. And so, yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts about that, about how that nervous system response can influence parents to create this
Right.
perfect persona on social media. And, like what the heck do we do about it?
Oof. So, yeah, there are different layers there, like layers for us as parents, where we look at social media and we judge ourselves based off of that perfection that we see online, and then what our kids are witnessing and
Mhm.
taking in their nervous systems. Oh my goodness. So, one of the things that I think about is modeling for our children appropriate use of technology. And so if we talk about being a leader with our children, what are they watching us do? So if we are on our phones constantly when our kids are around and if our faces are in our phones, we are not connecting. We are not making eye contact with some of the most important people in our lives. And that also is giving your kids permission to think, oh, it's totally cool just to do this, and like sometimes we do, and specifically for me, I can remember being a parent to my daughter, and I owned a business in the pandemic. I started a business, and a lot of my business was virtual, and I fielded calls. I was looking at emails and things like that, and sometimes I'd be on my phone and it would be totally business related. And she would, the best way that I could say is she would talk at me. She like it was hard for her to recognize, oh, I'm typing on my phone. I can't like my brain literally can like hear and process what you're trying to communicate with me. So I'd have to have conversations with her about, hey, if you see me typing on my phone, that means I can't hear you. You have to just wait. And then, it's not that I'm going to be on my phone for 5 minutes doing that, right? Like I can see you next to me needing my attention, but I'm in the middle of texting a client or something like that. So having good communication and sharing maybe with our kids, like, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm popping on my phone quick to check emails. Is there anything you need before, this happens? And so that shows communication. It shows that your child is important, and just like, as it goes, just have conversations around it. I think we cannot talk about not being perfect. I'm not perfect. So many times I had to rein it in or, correct this or have a conversation or own up to when I lost it, and and obviously I mean like sometimes like when we are in a position with teenagers, it feels like we're losing our minds. Like
Yes.
we are like they're not listening, the compliance is low, whatever it might be. Their hormones are out of control. Their brains are still developing, right? And I think that we forget that. And especially with teens, oh my goodness. I have the pleasure of being around now my partner's kids who are 11 to 15. Their bodies do not reflect their age, right? They look like they look like adults.
Mhm.
And so then when we as parents look at our children, we have to remember that their brains are not developed. It is our job as leaders in our families to recognize that, to know that, or not, right? But this is just prompting some insight, some awareness. Maybe look into understanding the brains of children and teens, right? There are lots of different resources out there on that. And it is really a unique situation for them in their world, in their head, in their bodies. And then for us as parents, we're taking all of that in and we have our own stressors. And so then, we as adults, what do we do after a long day? Some of us, not all of us, but what do we do after a long day? Right? We're like scrolling on the phone. We're, checking out Instagram or Facebook, getting caught up with like quote unquote the world, right? When maybe we've been at work all day and we want to have some level of awareness of what's going on. And then we get sucked into it. And that is just, I mean, the research is very clear that it is not good for our brains. It totally changes the neurochemistry. It does not contribute to happy feelings to be on social media all the time. Now, I suppose it does. Obviously, if you're consuming, your algorithm is very positive, and which I think my algorithm is pretty positive, but you know, for certain times of the year, certain things, events happening in the world, your algorithm is going to change. And so just being cautious about that. I tell my clients all the time, you're in charge of your algorithm. Like
Hmm.
it's you. They're targeting you for a reason because you clicked on this or that, and you can change that and block certain content or choose not to consume that negativity that you're seeing on social media, right? And because then that inadvertently affects the way that we parent our kids and how we show up in the world, how we show up in the world for our coworkers, for our teams, for our families, and just being really super aware of that in ourselves so that we can lead our kids and have conversations around like, okay, is it appropriate for you to have TikTok when you're 12? Hmm. Like there is unregulated access to certain things and content in um these media outlets, and it can be very dangerous to little brains, and especially when it is not controlled,
Yeah.
when it's not moderated. And so then that creates dysregulation in your kids more. So, I think like teens are already have a hard time. Preteens and teens, and like littles too. So I think, maybe 0 to 9 age range. If they're exposed to technology more than an hour a day, go out and Google that. Like, what is the recommended amount of technology exposure for kids 0 to 18? And you'll see the data. And I believe it's the last time I knew it was 1 hour.
Mm. Yeah. I think.
So, but it's been a while since I've been in that space. So, and that is just insanity. Like teens would laugh in your face. And maybe some of us have had our teens do that. Like, what? An hour? An hour a day? That's like before I go to school. you know? So, yeah, so I think that it it really can be a good conversation, like what are they spending their time on, and how are they regulating their nervous system? Are they creating a space for movement? Are you the kind of parent that might take your kiddo to the gym with them, or facilitate involvement in sports or clubs, because some kids aren't always into sports. Some are into clubs or art, like creative expression, like leading conversations around how are you spending your time, right? Giving them direction, because they're not going to be able to be like, oh no, I don't want to be on like, I don't, a group chat with my friends, or I don't want to not be on Fortnite, or what are the, like, I don't know what else. What are the other big video games these days?
I don't even know.
It's Fortnite and something else. I can't remember the other one. Roblox. That's
Yeah.
the other
Oh.
one.
Mhm.
So, and that's fun. That's like, and I know that some kids do that for connection time with actual friends they have in real life, right? It's like a way for them to spend time together with friends. They're having fun, they're laughing, whatever. But, still, it's like, okay, well, what else can you do with that friend, right? Are you going to their house for a sleepover and, making slime or jumping on a trampoline, or, like what other things can you do besides that? Um, so like just offering and having conversation and communication is a big one for preteens and teens, and any child really, but like it's our responsibility to educate and make our kids aware of their emotions, uh, giving them different choices, expanding their awareness, and And, other times we don't have the capacity for that. And that's okay. Like part of it is like not always being 100% on, that sometimes they're going to watch a whole day of Netflix and that's fine because you have a migraine or um, maybe there is some heavy thing going on in your world and you aren't able to navigate that and show up for your kids. One day is not, and some of us too, maybe listening to this might have some mental health concerns in our world as parents. And we can only do snippets of it. And, there's no judgment in that. You're not going to damage your children for the rest of their lives if they have a couple days, or, a day a week or a couple days a week of Netflix binging, right? Like it's all about moderation. It's about teaching like a grounded option for them, right? To take some leadership in their own world. But like I can tell you as a parent to a preteen and a teen who had a phone, I can't remember. I think she had a phone when she was 12, but it could have been a little earlier than that. And I was a divorced parent at that time. And I can remember even then, she wanted to connect with her friends on Snapchat because all of them were on Snapchat and they were all talking about this thread that they were chatting about and she felt left out. And but we had a conversation around it and I was like, I think it must have been 12 because she would be too young for 10. I would not have allowed that. So she had she had Snapchat at 10 and I would monitor it, right? Like we'd have discussions and conversations around bullying and, all those things that I would see as a therapist. She got those conversations at home because I saw the worst of it in my office. So, but part of it too, I think, is kids learn through making mistakes and they learn through the experience of it. And then as leaders in our families, we deal with it. Like we deal with those maybe not even problems, but just things that are coming up in those situations. So,
Wow. Well, and there was something that was kind of coming up for me as you were talking is, I was thinking a lot about that word leader. And a couple of things about that is one, I was thinking about like, what is it that I appreciate in a strong leader? And two things that really stood out for me is somebody who's regulated, right? And not that I would have called it that before, but, like somebody who isn't expecting me to be better behaved than they are. And something else I really appreciate in a leader, and something that I really try to embody in my home is I appreciate leaders who really um, observe to get the lay of the land instead of like charging in and like, here's what we're going to do. And here's,
right,
which I think is the difference between like those authoritarian type parents of, like, my kids need to be compliant versus let me observe to see what my kids really need. And
right,
I see this everywhere I go that I'm an observer. It's how I learn, but
right,
I will watch as parents are so wrapped up in their phones and the kids are like tugging at mom and dad or I'll
right,
never forget one day we were at a local restaurant and we were in like the lobby waiting to get a table and mom's on her phone and dad's on his phone and then the adolescent boy is on their phone and the toddler's just like I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with myself.
right,
And the toddler's like climbing up on a bench and jumping off and then gets in trouble. And I was like,
right,
I can't even wrap my head around what's happening because we are expecting
right.
the toddler to make like very adult decisions about
Absolutely. Their brains are not developed
yeah.
to
It,
know what to do. They're doing what they know is fun
Yeah,
and moving their
absolutely.
bodies. Right.
Absolutely. And so I was thinking about all of that about, and the other flip side of that is, most of the time leaders in when we think about jobs whatever that means to you. A leader is somebody who chose to be a leader. But I think about our parenting journey, and most of us wanted to be parents or came to a happiness with that at somewhere along our path.
Mhm.
But I've never met a parent who has gone into their parenting adventure saying like, I can't wait to be a strong leader for my kids, right? It's more about like, I want to love them and I want to nourish them and, maybe guide them. But being a leader, I don't think is often part of our thought process as parents, but it is a crucial part of our role to we have to go first with all of it, right? And we
Right.
don't have to be perfect, but
No,
but
no, right.
we often expect our kids to be better at things than we ourselves are, instead of really being a leader and saying like, actually, it's my job to go first. It's my job to I don't know, regulate myself first. It's my job to see what the kids need instead of expecting our kids to figure it all out and then
Oh, totally. Yeah, they don't know what they're doing, right?
no.
Like they like and we sometimes we don't even know what we're doing. We don't even have the answers. We have to go and Google it or ask
Mhm.
ChatGPT.
Mhm.
Um, and I think about yeah, I think about lots of different conversations I've been part of in like my time as a parent and then watching what's happening with my partner's kids and being involved in their lives now. And yeah, we don't know all the answers. Um, and I think it's really actually pretty powerful when we can say to our kids, I actually don't know. Let's figure this out together.
Yeah.
How amazing of an opportunity is that for them to see you in that space, that you are not the end all be all and that you're normal and human like they are because they don't know, right? And that can normalize their experiences, uh, whatever age they are. And, that you are a team together and just sort of respecting them in their own space. Because, boy, our kids are also exposed to a lot of information in a positive way, like things that they learn at school that can just come out in those conversations. And so, for example, helping a child with symptoms that they're having, maybe just thinking of, like, for example, a conversation recently on inflammation in the body. And one of the supplements for inflammation in the body that I am aware of as a therapist trained in integrative and functional medicine interventions for mental health is magnesium. Magnesium is it's like one of the leading supplements for inflammation in our body for both physical and mental health needs. And so I knew the answer to that. And right. And so I could be part of that conversation and suggest certain things. Um, and so maybe the child would be like, oh, well, I learned this in health class, or I learned this in science class, and you can have a conversation around it instead of being the end all be all expert. There could be this open-ended conversation and an open-ended conversation about nutrition around inflammation. We think about, like, what do kids gravitate towards, right? Like a lot of kids gravitate towards fried foods, like, French fries and chicken nuggets and whatever. And sometimes that can increase inflammation in the body. So at certain maybe times, um, it's better to avoid that and have like different whole foods and teaching them about nutrition and things like that. And they are exposed to that information. So it definitely is, one of those things that you can have open conversations around that. Um, but taking the reins, suggesting certain things, and not from an authoritarian energy, right? There are going to be times that it is really more appropriate to be more direct in parenting. And like the answer is no. And that's it, right? Um, I do, I like that there was years ago when I worked with kids, there was this client that came in and she said something about the yes method or the yes parenting, like yes parenting approach. And I really, really like that. So that's just something to think about because I think it changes the way that our kids receive us when we set boundaries and how we use our language to set boundaries and how we show our kids how we're responding in some of those ways. So I think of, for example, if your kiddo is it's 10 o'clock at night and they want to watch an episode of SpongeBob on whatever, whatever they're into. If it's, I don't know if it's on Netflix or not, if it's YouTube or what they watch SpongeBob on now. And the answer is going to be no most of the time, right? For most parents, they'd say no. Like, so I might say something like, yes, you can watch SpongeBob this weekend. Right. And like it's not a direct no, you can't watch it right now. Like, and it might need to get to that point that you say that if there's some persistence or, whatever that might be. But the way that their nervous systems receive that versus a direct no and a shutdown maybe are different. That's a curious thing. I actually would love to see if there's research around that now that I say that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's so interesting too. I mean, one of the things that I talk about here is that, you know, when I think about this concept of being a leader in our parenting role, I've definitely evolved, right? Like you and I both started our careers in like a strict ABA realm, which has very
Yes. Yes,
clear,
we did.
it has very clear rules about
Yeah.
expecting compliance from kids, at least how it was taught 20 plus years
Right.
ago. I
Right.
know it's
Right.
evolved, but I
Right.
went into my parenting journey with such clear expectations about like I'm in charge, you follow.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
shifted that a lot. And
yeah,
ultimately, I mean,
right.
I think in the past 5 or so years, um, have decided that that didn't mesh well with my view of kids because in the past few years, I've really evolved my perspective on parenting to see that our role, it is to be a leader, but it's also to be a steward for our kids' energy. And, like you and I have talked a little bit about, I so firmly see evidence day after day about the beauty of human design. And when we show up for our kids, when we see them, instead of, I think about like, um, when I think about how I had first learned about parenting and really through the lens of ABA,
Mm.
I I now take that to be so much about I'm going to parent you or teach you based on what I need. I need you to be
Ooh,
compliant about this, this, or this because it makes my world easier, happier, calmer, more peaceful, whatever it
right.
might be. And none of that takes into account the unique needs of that child. None of it does. And to me, that's still a really hard pill to swallow because I mean, that's how I raised my daughter through the lens of ABA because it's what I know.
Oh, sure. Right, right. Exactly. Right.
But when I think about like this example of, I love that SpongeBob example because because I think about, right? So in my home, my daughter does live here with her husband. She's 24, he's 25.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
two little ones, a 2 and a 3.
Oh,
And I know
oh,
so much about their design, and it's fascinating to watch it play out in their teeny tiny little bodies in the way they experiment and
wow.
explore. And one of them needs to feel powerful, and I can see it in her design where the other one needs more attention or connection.
Hmm.
And when I think about that idea of the SpongeBob example, they're not asking for SpongeBob yet. They don't even know who. But when I think about that idea of, like it's 10 o'clock at night and they're asking for something to really pause as a leader, right? And I'm not the parent, I'm the grandparent, but sometimes I
Yeah.
offer guidance. But to take that pause and take a step back and really understand what is that underlying need, right? Like, because I don't think that it's usually just like, I just want SpongeBob, right? Like, are they struggling with,
Right.
is there something about energy
Yes.
needs that they need to sleep better? Or do they
Yeah,
have
that's a great
stories
point.
that are going through their head that it's it kind of for the same reason we scroll social media, right? Like, do they want more
Mhm.
SpongeBob because if they turn it off, then their mind is just racing. And is there something we can
Yes.
support them energetically? And I think so much about that, the power of us as leaders, whether or not we chose to be leaders, but to really show up for our kids so freaking differently than we
Right.
did when we could only see them through our own needs. And it
Right.
feels weird to say that, right? Because I don't think that I parented my kids like, do what I need you to do, but I kind of did because
Right.
I didn't know
But
any different.
no, you didn't know any different, and neither did I, right? And you're right that we were young.
Hmm.
I don't know how young you were. I was 19 when I started my ABA journey.
Hmm. Same.
And ooh, young, right? Like,
Hmm.
and my brain wasn't fully developed at that time.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, knew what we knew and then went with it. And like the other thing that I think is really important is like we learn along the way. What do really great leaders do? They take feedback
Hmm. Yeah.
and sometimes criticism. And what do we do as leaders who grow from that when we make mistakes?
Yeah.
Because you will do that over and over again as a parent. I made so many mistakes, I don't even know how many, like many. Um, but yeah, having some grace for yourself and compassion and just you steer the ship differently when you know differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And uh I think about that concept of learning as we go through this experiment of parenting because that sure wasn't how I was raised, right? Like I think about, and my dad was he was very like steady and
Yeah,
calm and loving. But he had his one way of parenting and that was it.
yeah,
And so if I
sure.
needed different than my brother needed, he still just parented the same way
Yeah,
without without a ton of evidence, at least from my perspective, that he learned like, oh, that didn't work so well for her. Let me shift my parenting. And I think, as we as parents really are um, stepping into our role that our kids, right? Society is getting weird. I'll just throw that out there.
oh my
Our
gosh.
kids need us to do differently than our parents did. And even if our kids are young adults, we still have this opportunity to show up for them differently and to continuously like mold the way we show up for them too, instead of just being like, nope, this is how I was taught to be a parent. This is
Right,
this is
right,
like the podium I'm going to stand on until my kid,
right.
right? Like it,
Because I said so.
yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really great point. It's really interesting to me because I raised a daughter. She's my only child. So I didn't have like the ability to watch her be a sibling, right? And to navigate having three girls, preteen to teen, in my life now and watching my partner parent, he parents each of them according to who they are.
Mm, yeah.
And that is, I have never been like, I've known that, but the way that you pointed that out just now is just a really beautiful way to recognize that happening. And I think that's really, really important and necessary. And I think probably a lot of parents that have multiple kids, two, three, or more kids, can say, "Oh, this child is totally different from this child." But yeah, do we really are we aware of how we're interacting with them in,
Hmm.
as leaders in our families? I think that definitely is something to encourage and create some self-inquiry around after this episode.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think about like my parenting journey. So my daughter, I have one biological child, and
Uh,
she was an only child until the age of 10. And then
yeah,
suddenly at the age of 10, she had a 5-year-old brother. And so
yeah,
it was such a disruption in
yeah,
um, her dynamic with me and her role in the family. And
sure,
I look
yeah,
back, and my kids needed something very different for me for a whole slew of reasons, right? They're
yeah,
different humans. They have different biology. One's a boy, one's a girl. Um,
right.
one came to us with you know, a bag full of past history.
Yes.
The other,
Yeah,
I know all of her history, I think.
yeah, right.
So they both needed something very different for me. And I did parent them differently. But when I look back, I still, like, I parented them differently, but I still made decisions that were about how do I like help them fit into my parenting box about what is a good kid instead of
Yeah,
like, I really think about my role in supporting parents is really helping them see their kids for who they are and to get out of our own ego, which I,
right.
again, there is no perfection, but
No,
when we can move closer and closer to meeting them where they're at, they're so much more empowered, and we need our kids to be empowered as, again, you said it the other day, right? The world is on fire, and
oh my gosh,
we
right.
need our kids to be empowered instead of conform to what we think is right for them. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, right? Like, yes, I'm not saying all parents are like, all my kids are, little widgets that I'm gonna turn into the same. But until we really have the ability to the see their needs, I think still so much of our parenting comes from what we need as opposed to what they need. And it's
Right,
an interesting shift.
right. Definitely. And I think that this episode will hit home for a lot of your listeners. And even for me, as considered an expert in my field in trauma work, and just the years that I've been a therapist doesn't mean I know everything. So I'm all, like, again, and I'm like taking it all in. I'm like, I am learning in this, just in this conversation about how to step into that leadership role as a parent. And I do think that I've been aware of that without naming it like that. And I think naming it really can be even more powerful because the words we use are so incredibly impactful and have meaning. And so I, for a long time, when my daughter was in high school, I said this thing as she grew older into her junior, senior year. One of my job, I should say, not everybody's job because they have different kids with different abilities. Um, and my job as a parent to my daughter was to contribute to her being a whatever way she can useful to herself in society, and whatever that might look like, contributing to society by having a job or what her leadership looks like in community organizations. Like I think about volunteer work and what her self leadership looks like. I tried to influence her for years to use tapping and meditation. And she's finally tapping. She's finally like actually doing that and finding relief, amazingly enough. So, that and she really loved the Calm app. So she would fall asleep to meditation music. She really loved that. So that was something she did. Um, she went with it. And, just think about having a child as a child therapist. It's like everything should be fine. I should understand everything. Yeah, no. No, that's not how it works.
No, not at all.
No. And and I never thought that, it was just always this funny thing that I would joke around with my friends and even clients. It's like, you think I have a perfect life? No. It's far from it. Um, and I think just like normalizing that too, right? And so yeah, I think um there definitely is this awareness of the importance of seeing our kids for who they are, what they bring to the table, their different levels of abilities and uniqueness that they bring to the table, and their gifts, the challenges that they have, acknowledging those and helping them learn about that in themselves as part of leadership too. And we could go on and on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely want to, we should do this again.
Yeah,
I definitely
sure.
want
We
to
could do
be
it again.
mindful of time and for the listeners, because I know as parents, you have such limited time to yourself.
Yes.
So I do want to wrap up with maybe a practical tip or something that parents can do to really step into that role as a leader, right? I think first is this conversation
Right.
about acknowledging that it's part of the job description, whether or not you wanted it. We all have that, right? You
Right.
your job description.
Totally.
Oh, I have to take care of time cards too. That's not what I
Oh
wanted
my
to do.
gosh.
Okay.
Right. No.
But it is part of the job description being a parent. So I think first is that awareness, but I'd love to hear, something practical that listeners can do to help themselves with any piece of that equation.
I think one of the most important things is going to be opening up conversation with your kids and for them to know that you're watching and listening and wanting to be better, that you aren't the end all be all authority. I mean, you are like, authority in terms of leadership, right? Like, but not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Um, that I think is so incredibly powerful when you can have a conversation and ask your kids, like, what can I do better?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my.
What can we do differently?
Yeah.
Right? Because if we think about that, like in human resources, right? Like in human resources, they teach leaders in organizations how to be better leaders, and that is by getting feedback.
Hmm.
Because we sometimes don't know what we need to do to be better.
Yeah.
And those around us observe us and they see us and they can point things out. And like, and then being in a space to receive that. So please, 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 if you open up conversation with your kids around this, they have to know that it's a safe space. Obviously, there cannot be, like there's limits, no verbal attacks and, you know, mean energy around it, like, providing a space for them to provide feedback and educating them on how to do that. If they say something that's maybe not appropriate or disrespectful or something like that, then you guide them and say, okay, I hear you. Like maybe you could have said it like this because that hurt my feelings a little bit, or something like that. But, I think that it would really surprise you to open up conversation around that just to kind of see, and then you as the person receiving that, having the insight and awareness to take it in, and then what do you do with that? So it doesn't mean, oh, because my kids said I should let them go on their phones 12 hours a day, that like I'm going to do that. No, that's like not, like you can receive it. You could say, I hear what you're saying. And I love like that point, Angie, about like what is the reason for that, right? Like why do they want to be on their phones 12 hours a day? Why? Like what is, and we know why neurochemically because they are getting that like that dopamine hit. They are getting, and it's not that, it doesn't mean it's positive, but they're getting that dopamine hit. And how can you get dopamine hits without that, right? Like educating them like, oh, well, it feels good to have connection. That's great. Yes, you need connection with your friends. That's going to be limited to 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day or 2 hours in the weekend and 1 hour on the school days. Um, and if you want more connection with your friends, let's get you involved in a club or organize a time for your friends to come over and do crafts together or, something like that. So nurturing those needs in unique ways for whatever your kiddo is presenting. Um, yeah, that's homework for the viewers or the
Mhm.
the listeners, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, and you think about like that idea of, right, like it is easy for teenagers to say they need connection, right? That's why they
Right,
want this. But I know energetically that I don't have research about this, but I don't think that our energy, right? Like say for example, you have a split design where you really need people so your energy flows. I don't think that texting or, scrolling social media or
right,
playing Roblox on your computer.
right.
I don't think that our energy flows through our Xbox to our peers.
Yeah,
And I think that
yeah.
face-to-face connection is necessary for us to experience
Oh,
our full
yes.
energy flow.
Oh, totally,
Eye contact, the closeness,
totally.
even physical touch is
Right.
those are all human needs,
Right.
and we deny it. Yeah. So the other thing I have to share this funny story as you were talking about, like, I think what you were sharing, I think is that perfect takeaway, right? Like really listening to our kids and being open to what they say. And I often say like at any age. And so
Oh,
we had an
right.
incident the other day where my partner and I are downstairs. It's the parents are putting the toddlers to bed, and I hear one of the parents, what are you doing to the 3-year-old? And we find out that she was like elbow deep in the toilet. And so, right, she just got the like, we don't do that, which is a normal parenting reaction. So
Yeah.
there's no judgment there.
Right.
But
Right.
then the next day I said, oh, I heard that you had your hands in the toilet. What happened? And she said, oh, I was fishing for the sharks. I was like, oh, how did they get in there? And she says, well, I dropped them in there. They needed to go fishing in the water. I was like, huh, right. But if we just jump to like
Right.
you didn't fit in my box of how kids are supposed to behave. Kids don't put their hands
Right.
in the toilet. And
Right.
we parent from our own perspective, we're not really listening to what happened. And she
Right.
essentially told me I wanted the fish in the water. I felt a need to explore, which then created a space for me to say, like, oh, if the fish needed to be in the water, we could use the sink or we could put a bucket in the bathtub that you could fill up, but we
Exactly. That's the
can't use
yes.
the
It's like,
toilet.
yes, the sharks can go swimming. This is where the sharks go swimming.
Yeah, nobody goes swimming in the toilet. It's just a no.
Go swimming in the toilet.
But it's just a silly but very true example of how, as parents, it's so easy to like to like want to control our kids, even when we say we
Right.
don't want to, right? Because we're like, oh crap, they didn't fit in my box of how kids are supposed to behave and they broke a rule. And I
Right.
need to like parent them. And
Right.
I think we parent them through the yeses, through the listening
Right.
at any age. And like, again, I know enough about her design to know this little girl is going to get into all kinds of shenanigans because it's
That's going to be a lot of that.
just energetically, it's how she's designed. So either we can meet her with a lot of resistance and frustration, or say, like, okay, let's anticipate that she's going to be up to, shenanigans, and let's make sure we
Yeah,
keep showing her how
creative.
to do it in a way that helps
Yeah.
her learn and grow and not feel shame for
Right.
being herself.
Yeah.
So we'll end it at
Love
that.
that.
I think
That's a
that was a
great story. That's a great story.
toilet diving. So, Cassandra, yeah, would you mind sharing where listeners can find you, connect with you? Feel free to invite them into the lab if that feels good.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, absolutely. 100%. So embodiedriseinstitute.com is where you can find information about my coaching, and the Skool community link is right there on the website. You can visit me on Skool at the Nervous System Leadership Lab if you're already in Skool and familiar with that platform. It is a free community. Also, where I'll be offering my paid membership and coaching coming soon. And I do have a leadership, I have a workshop coming up in February. So, February 28th, I have a workshop in person or virtual that is focused around creating your nervous system toolkit, which I think is pretty fitting for just life in general, but like extra around what's happening in the world at this time. So, creating some sort of regulation and grounding in ourselves so that we can show up in lots of ways around us is really important. And that is what we will be doing in that workshop. So,
Oh,
you can
I love
check
it.
that out as well on my website.
Perfect. Well, I am just so grateful that you came here to hang out with me and with the listeners today. I value your perspective so much. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us.
Thank you.
And I will get all of your links into the show notes so that everybody has that. So again, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.